So we're almost done. We're up to our second last team in this lengthy discussion in which we've casually worked as a GM for pretty much every franchise. And now we're up to the Miami Heat and runners up in the finals 4-1. I think they could have lost 4-0, and it's still an impressive feat and amazing franchise and, really maximize their talent. But, what now? So talking about a franchise that's now had two shots at the finals in the last couple of years with Jimmy and Hero and Robinson and Bam, kind of being part of that core. And all right, maybe the Tyler Hero injury was a problem. I don't think that was the game changer. There's just something missing, right? And so what do we do? And I've got a couple of suggestions, and they'll be wild as always. Don't worry. So, look, we got some big contracts on the Heat. We got Lowry and Robinson specifically, who have some relatively large contracts, and then we have Hero's extension as well coming in, which will be a large contract. But then there's the youth sell. But I'm not getting rid of Hero. I think you keep that. This is a potential landing spot for Lillard or Kawhi. I think both around that same exorbitant salary, and they go out for Lowry and Robinson. This is the logic for the other team, like I've done multiple times now, that they give up, they get off Lillard, they get off Kawhi respectively, they take back contracts that are expiring, that are large, that maybe they can waive middle of the season at a certain rate, similar to what you're hearing in the Chris Paul situation. But they bring in someone like Kawhi who can do the Jimmy Butler treatment and only play half the time, and then hopefully have a good playoff push. Or obviously Lillard really could probably power them through the regular season, allow Jimmy to slot in probably to that second primary scorer, isolation scorer role that I think he's probably better suited for. I think Jimmy outperforms maybe his role on a championship team. I think he's the second best player on a team, not a first. And Lillard obviously would help that just as much as Kawhi would. Second move would be, I think you get off Caleb Martin. I think you strike while the iron's hot. Fantastic series in the Eastern Conference Finals, completely non-factor in the NBA Finals, and obviously he's an undrafted, recent pickup. Clearly, people are going to be interested in that. Who does he go to? I'm going to go with Ricky Rubio from the Cavs. This might fill the Cavs issue of a forward slot, and then Ricky Rubio can come in and be that veteran point guard, hopefully supplementing what we've lost with Kyle Lowry a little bit. And then the last one would be, I think they've already got some decent culture practices, but they need to figure out who was on that Phoenix Suns medical team from about like 2005 to 2012. And they need to hire them, hire their teachers, hire their students, whoever it is. But they need to get a good medical team just to soup up whatever it is, right? If Jimmy rolls his ankle, they've got the cream or the spray just to like get that back to 120%. So those are my three moves: Lillard or Kawhi for Lowry, Robinson, and maybe some picks. Caleb Martin for Ricky Rubio, and then invest in whatever health science you can possibly invest in.
Some interesting moves there. Rubio to the Heat. I don't know, that's an interesting move. You might as well bring back Goran Dragic, I think, for the amount of impact that I think a move like that would have for them. So look, I guess you're right. Firstly, the Heat had a great run this year, all the way to the finals, losing 4-1. There's definitely respect there, and I think they should be not necessarily pleased with the result, but I guess pleased that they ultimately got to that stage, and they sort of put out that sort of fight, I guess. At the end of the day, that last game wasn't a blowout. That's probably nice to see, right? It would have been even more disappointing if that was like a 20-point margin in that last game and they just sort of folded. But it was probably inevitable that Jimmy Butler and an Erik Spoelstra team was not going to fold in that sort of way. Yeah, they're going to sort of go out swinging in every way, shape, and form. And even though they lost, they sort of they emptied every sort of bullet in the chamber in that sort of sense, right? So I think the Heat fans got to feel a little bit hard done by, and the organization too. The last two times they made the finals now, injuries have played a factor. I'm not saying that that's going to be, that the outcomes would have been any different, but injuries have played a factor, which then sort of poses a level of what if. What if we just had all our players healthy? And I think the greater situation there, the last 10 times they made the finals now, they were the underdog as well. So not only were they on paper the worst off team, but then, minus another key player, another key player, and in 2020, I think 2 key players, suddenly your job is so much harder, so much harder. So I think everyone sort of doesn't give Tyler Hero the props there. And, I'm not saying he would have, given them a win in the finals here in a sense, in a series win at least. But, he did average 20 points a game this year. He's really sort of come into a player, of his own right now, in that sort of sense. And, would the Heat have loved him on the floor? Absolutely. All right. And you alluded to it that Caleb Martin sort of disappeared in the finals. Gabe Vincent played terribly. Max Strus couldn't hit a shot, and all these players that, sort of contributed in the earlier rounds brought nothing to the finals, unfortunately. I think last man standing was Duncan Robinson, and, he probably did what you sort of expect him to do, but no one was going to say he was on average 30 points a game or anything like that, was it? So that's the reality. So look, I think Heat don't need to freak out too much. You've got some interesting trades there, I think. Which obviously, I think Duncan Robinson, if you can hold on to him, I think he's shown that he has value. Yeah, he has value in that sort of capacity. I would say you try and re-sign these players that did fill out your bench in that sort of sense, if they're willing to stay for a right number. And look, at the end of the day, it's probably inevitable. One or two of them may get larger offers at another club, and you may have to make the decision to let them walk. And I think the Heat will, probably do that, and you try and find that production somewhere else. But from a trade perspective, Lillard was actually on the top of my trade list too. Okay, you mentioned Lillard and Kawhi. But I think another name that's floated up, which also turns green, which is really now, all the talk of Trade Town at the moment, is Bradley Beal. And I think if you actually put Bradley Beal on the block, and I know he's got a no trade clause, I think, in his contract, but I think if, he was being told he's going to Miami, I think you would assume he would waive that and he would go there and join such an organization. That, Bradley Beal for Kyle Lowry, obviously that's one of the big contracts there that's sort of bloated on the Heat payroll, that, he doesn't give you that production, I guess. He gives you that sort of vet leadership, but doesn't give you that production necessarily. And Victor Oladipo, you pair those two up, okay, and obviously, does Washington want them? Probably not. You might have to reroute them somewhere else where they ultimately being waived or bought out or something like that, maybe even. But Kyle Lowry, Victor Oladipo for Bradley Beal turns green, and I think if you put Bradley Beal on this team here and keep the rest of the core, ultimately, I don't know. You feel that they would at least give themselves a chance that you get back to the finals, and if they could stay healthy for once, maybe get the job done.
Yeah, look, I think any trade that comes in for a big name, when we talk about Lillard, when we talk about Beal, and obviously, as I'm trying to peddle, this isn't public knowledge, but I'm trying to peddle the Kawhi and Paul George stuff, is, yeah, why would a team want to take back expiring contracts for a weird role player or potential when they're giving up a superstar? Well, the big thing here is it's money, right? So Brad Beal's a $50 million a year player. And when you think about the salary cap restrictions, we kind of know that Bradley Beal isn't going to win it for the Wizards. So it's one of those things of cut your losses, right? Just, I think maybe I'd be a really reckless GM, but I just think that there's such an attachment sometimes to the decisions that people make that they have to like ride them into the ground. They're like, yeah, I signed this guy. I think he can do it. And I'm just going to stick with him for the next 5 years. And it's just like, and nothing in the last 5 years showed me that I should, but I'm just going to believe. I've got to validate my decision. I've got to, and maybe it's job security. Maybe that's why GMs do it, because it's a plan. We know that 29 teams lose every year, and it's about a future. It's about, hey, I'm trying to create a window here. But yeah, look, the Wizards need to go in a direction, and Brad Beal's been their direction, and they've, like, ironically, their most recent successful stint was when they had Russell Westbrook, which is not a good sign. And I think they stole a game off Philly in that round, but admittedly, that was the great Philly collapse that was just waiting to happen. And it was also the COVID season. So, the Wizards, we both agree, Lowry comes in. Maybe he's someone that gets bought out, waived. I'm not too sure about the ins and outs of his contract. And yeah, I think, anyone being paired up with Heat culture and having some talent, I think it's a dangerous thing for the rest of the league.
This is Two Guys with Spare Time. I'm Fowles. This is Nick. you're probably a basketball fan like us, so hopefully you can throw us an assist in giving our video a like and subscribing to our channel.
And if you got thoughts, feelings, or even some suggestions, please put them down in the comment section below. And thank you for using your spare time to watch us in our spare time.